Hey, welcome to First Issue Club. We're your weekly comic book podcast. We're just like Sue Storm. We love a good read. It's a big week for us. We're getting ready for Planet Comic-Con in Kansas City, and we're excited to bring a whole new game to the Boulevard Brewery booth. Let's get this business out of the way right at the top. We love Boulevard Brewery. They're the reason this show comes to your ears once a week for however many episodes we've done in a row, 380 or something at this point.
5
So
million.
shout out 5 million episodes. Shout out to Boulevard Brewing Company, specifically the Space Camper IPA line of beers. It's a beautiful tasting joyride through the solar system of your taste buds. And yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff throughout the week. We're going to talk about it a little more on our Patreon, and hopefully having our dear friend Greg hop on to do a little Planet Comic-Con prep with us on the Patreon this week. So hop over there if you want to hear that. But your regular episode, you got me and Vargas navigating you through the comic book news and issues of the week.
You say we're gonna do Planet Comic-Con prep on the Patreon.
Yes.
What I envision is gonna happen is us going, "Oh my god, I'm so excited for," and then there's like an hour of that.
Yes. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen as well.
Okay, just as long as the prep work is us just like dorking out about what we're excited about, that's fine. I'm down with that prep.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff in place in our little boxes and go bags ready to go. Well, we're gonna kind of give the inventory, I think, of our go bags and
Yes.
talk about all the stuff that we're bringing to the con and what we've made and what we have ready, all that good stuff. So this should
Unfortunately,
be a fun one.
my wife said I could not buy Uncrustables, so no
Ugh.
Uncrustables in my to-go bag.
Ugh.
I know. I know. But that just leaves, $8 more that I can spend on comic books. So
That's right. Yeah, who needs to eat? You just get every year I'm there, and like con food is so bad that I always end up buying like a $5 soda and
Yeah.
then just feel insane.
Yeah.
Just like empty sugar and caffeine.
And a
And like
lukewarm Chick-fil-A sandwich.
God, that you had to wait in line. Like there is a Chick-fil-A, or there was last year, inside the Kansas City Convention Center, and the line was like an hour and a half long to get a Chick-fil-A sandwich because it was literally like the only food that was recognizable as food.
Yeah. That's one thing I didn't reflect on at C2E2 was
Yeah.
the food was better. I mean, it's still like football stadium food,
Yeah, C2E2 does a nice thing where they create this kind of like yard picnic area.
Yeah.
And they've got some like higher scale food vendors around that. And you can kind of feel like you've left the con without leaving the con. They put like AstroTurf down and some like TV with like sports and video games in the distance. So you kind of feel like you're at this like common area party zone.
Yeah,
But
you can
it is
pretend
separated.
you're having a meal.
Yeah. Whereas, at Planet, you're like a little gremlin in a corner, like shoving like whatever carbs you can get into your face, and people are just like, out of my way, freak.
Yeah. Your
But
gas station hot dog that you paid $27 for.
That's not to say the Kansas City. I don't want to dissuade people from coming to the Kansas City Con. One of the great things that about our con is that if you're able to leave it for a little bit, there's like an awesome party district within walking distance that has a bunch of higher end food places and bars and grills and all kinds of different places to get a bite to eat and hang out for a little bit and take a break. But in Chicago, it's like we have to wait for an Uber or transit and drive back downtown to get out of like the McCormick Place Convention Center. And it's a whole ordeal to like leave and come back. So kind of just depends on what you're in the mood for at the moment, but it's definitely easier. C2E2 and McCormick Place have figured out a way to make staying there a little more comfortable because
Yeah.
it is harder to leave,
Yeah.
which is appreciated. In any case,
but if you
we
are
s-
at Planet, we'll talk about it more on Patreon, like Mike said. But
exactly right.
if you're there, come find us. We'll tell you all the good barbecue places to go.
That's right. Booth 100.
That's right.
We got a good even number this year.
Okay, so Mike and I are going to try something a little bit different for your comic book news.
Yes.
He's got what side are you on? Bleeding Cool?
I'm on Bleeding Cool.
And I've got CBR, Comic Book Resources, pulled up. And we're just going to give it a little scroll and see what strikes our fancy. I have 2 articles pulled up if you don't have anything yet, Mike.
Let's go.
All right. So I will say I cheated. I read a different article about this earlier today, but have you heard about Warner Brothers wiping out their Looney Tunes archive on Max?
No.
Yeah. So they pretty much buried everything Looney Tunes off of Max. It's just gone. And it equates to about 95 years of animation just nuked off the planet. And that is kind of a I don't know, exemplar of the other things they've been doing with that platform.
Yeah.
That there's that famous the Looney Tunes movie, Coyote
Oh,
versus Acme,
yes.
that they nuked earlier.
Yep.
And they also chose not to release The Day the Earth Blew Up, which was their most recent Looney Tunes movie, which actually released in theaters March 14th. And I had no idea.
Oh, bizarre. I know that a handful of critics were able to see some of these Looney Tunes movies too. And I don't know if they're barred from talking about it, but I think the general sentiment was that they were like watchable. It's not like they were terrible.
So The Day the Earth Blew Up is getting like B minus B reviews, right?
Okay.
You can go see that now. It's in theaters.
It's in theaters. Okay.
The Coyote versus Acme movie was apparently like Oscar-worthy comedy.
Oh.
Like everybody who worked on it, everybody who saw the working cut was like, this is a phenomenal movie. And it just got written off for tax reasons because Zaslav hates entertainment.
Yeah, I hate the whole tax reason thing. It's pretty rough. Yeah, I think sometimes when things are on streamers now, we start to take for granted the fact that like some things seem like universal constants of content that are just always going to be available to us. Like, and something as classic as Looney Tunes just feels like, just like walking into a library, it's just like always going to be available for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little odd. You almost wonder if like we're going to get to a point where every property ever is going to have its own streaming service, and you're going to have to pay $3 a month for continual access to like Looney Tunes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, yeah, that's ideally probably what these companies want, right?
Yeah.
Because that gives you the opportunity to judge what people want, like what people want to see, right? So
Yep.
even if you have like, I mean, I know you and I have chatted about Kurosawa movies, but like, who wants to watch a black and white 3.5 hour long samurai movie in 2025? Right. Nobody. But those movies are worth preserving. Like, there's artistic value in having those available. Same as there is for any kind of animation, right? Especially something like Looney Tunes that's like a cultural touchstone. So to see that stuff just kind of completely, just wiped out off of a streaming platform is disheartening, I think is
Yeah.
the right word.
Looney Tunes is a good reminder of like the creativity of people and like the zaniness that humanity can bring to media. Like I do think there's something about early creativity in a certain medium that is an argument against AI or a reminder to like not go fully AI with everything that gets created moving forward, just
Yeah.
because there is that like wild human aspect, and that's what makes stuff good. That I'm all yeah, I don't know if AI will get better and better over time, but I'm just exhausted by all of the AI emails from colleagues that I read and the LinkedIn posts you see, and in the comic book collecting fandom, like the everybody's eBay descriptions are
Yeah.
AI written, and it's like they give zero value. Like they say nothing about what a buyer wants to know about a comic. It just like regurgitates that it's like a great collectible and that
Yeah.
you should get your hands on it because it's a classic and something for every collectible should every collector should want.
Yeah.
Uh, and the more people use it, the emptier and emptier that stuff gets, and the more you watch just like classic stuff that was more touched by the hands of original people who were forced into an environment where they had to be original, and you're like, this is good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Uh,
All right,
I think
all
I
right, you
saw okay, so a poignant moment. I think I saw an
yeah.
XQCD uh comic about AI, and it was a guy and he's like, "Hey, check it out. I can take this bullet point and have AI expanded into, a 3 paragraph email so I sound smarter." And then the other side of the comic is a guy sitting at a computer and he says, "Hey, check it out. I can take this 3 paragraph email and have
Mhm.
AI condense it down to a single bullet point."
Yep.
And it's that bullshit, right?
Yeah, right. Love it. All right, it's my turn.
It's your
In
turn.
our war of headlines. Marvel Comic relaunches Fantastic Four with an all new #1 in July.
Ooh, do we
N-
have a creative team yet?
yes, Ryan North, who is already writing Fantastic Four,
Uh-huh.
and Umberto Ramos. So I know I love Umberto Ramos. I'm a child of the '90s, so his art hits a certain nostalgic vein for me.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I do think my I guess my Marvel conspiracy brain is like a new #1 will be exciting to coincide more with the movie coming out this summer, right?
Yeah.
And so it's since Ryan North is still writing it, it's probably a part of like the hype machine for the movie, or maybe to like tweak some things so there's some confluence between what's happening in the movie and what's happening to comics that makes it a little more easy to onboard into a new #1. I
Mhm.
always see like a bunch of discourse on Reddit every time Marvel does a new first issue where people are like, I hate this. Why can't we keep stuff going the way it is and um, have these long running titles? And I think this is just like at its essence, it is a long running title. Um,
Yeah.
you're just giving a new era of it a new number to invite more people in. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't know that like a #1 is necessarily going to be kicking the stuff you know and love about Fantastic Four to the curb. So that's just my PSA. If you're one of those, because we've got new comic book readers who are probably going to be excited by this listening to the podcast. We've got old comic book readers who might be a little like, ugh, no. But same writer. He's been doing kind of one shot issues of Fantastic Four for a good while in his series, that they tell this longer ongoing narrative, but they feel like the classic Stan Lee issues in that you can pick it up and kind of get told like a complete little nugget of a story that generally makes the whole series a little more accessible. Um, and I think people have really been loving that, especially old heads, and as an homage to where Fantastic Four and these old Marvel comics came from, and new people because you can buy Fantastic Four 27 in this newest volume and like have fun with it without having the entire context. But there's something rewarding if you've been there for it all, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So props to Ryan North, and excited for Umberto Ramos, and we'll see what happens with all of the Doom stuff. That'll
I
probably
have.
be coming into a climax this summer.
Oh, definitely. Um, I have such a skewed view of Umberto Ramos's art,
Mhm.
um, because he's so ingrained in Spider-Man, at least for
Yeah,
me. I kind of have a hard time picturing what his Fantastic Four would look like in my head.
yeah.
What's his version of the Thing gonna look like? I don't know. Probably really, really huge.
He has, like, a slightly he's like a mix between, like, anime and Jim Lee to me, where he has a lot of those, like, really classic, like, '90s comic hallmarks, but skews a little more stylistic than a lot of the house styles with,
Yeah, totally.
like you're saying, kind of, like, exaggerated sizes of some characters, or, like, big, massive sneakers on
Yeah,
characters, and the women have, like, really big eyes with, like, massive eyelashes and really heavy, thick, like, lines around everything, and I just there's something about this that, like, I don't know if it translates for people who are looking at Humberto Ramos's art now, but his stuff makes me feel like a kid again because I just grew up reading, like, Crimson and Impulse, and liked a lot of gravitated towards a lot of the stuff that he was working on when I was a teenager.
hmm
Alright, do you wanna take a turn?
sure. Uh, CBR has an article says Marvel
CBR
Studios.
versus Bleeding Cool.
That's
That's what
right.
we should title this article or episode.
Marvel Studios confirms the MCU's first canon event. So let's see, 24 shows and 33 films released on the MCU. That's an insane amount.
Wait, one more time, what is happening?
So the article is about Marvel Studios confirming the MCU's first canon event. So they have this idea that a canon event can't be messed with, right?
Oh,
Like on the timeline.
okay,
Like
yes,
even if you time travel, it has to happen, right? It's a
this is
canon event.
language that comes from, like, Edge of Spider-Verse.
hmm
They have canon events, which is, like, every Spider-Man needs a Gwen to die or an Uncle Ben to die
Yeah,
to make them who they are, which ultimately ends up saving more lives in the long run.
correct.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm skimming through this quickly. There's a book that recently came out, the Marvel Studios, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, an official timeline, which has a canon chronology of canon events,
Mhm.
which says, let's see, the creation of Mount Wundagore. Is that what it is? Let's see. No, it looks like it's uh the book confirms in an entry called The Handiwork of the Celestials, which depicts the beings as one of the oldest and most powerful forms of the universe. Okay, that doesn't tell
It's
me
funny that
anything.
the movie that people, like, least recognize as part of the MCU is being referenced as, like, maybe one of the most important moments in the in the MCU,
Right.
if I'm understanding you right.
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to say. This is not written well. but
Shots
it's
at CBR.
well, I'm
Maybe
not
they're having
saying
AI write their
I was gonna
articles.
say I'm sure it's not AI, but um okay, the book confirms this in an entry called The Handiwork of the Celestials, which depicts the beings as, quote, one of the oldest and most powerful forms of life to ever exist. So I guess they're saying that the Celestials, the creation of the Celestials is the first canon event, or the stuff that the Celestials do, maybe the creation of Earth or something.
Yeah, it's just like the earliest moment in MCU history that we've been able to like track back to. Here's what this article is. This is something to get movie fans to click
Yeah,
based on a headline, and then it says absolutely nothing on the inside. And
that's
shame on you, CBR. And you're getting put into our Apple News feeds and our uh, algorithms that serve us news headlines because you're writing these things that have nothing inside of them. Screen Rant is really bad about doing this stuff where they just like take a nothing burger factoid and turn it into a great headline.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, the article could have been a headline that's like, "Hey, Marvel released a new book, and the first canon event was y- Captain America, farting on a can or something, whatever it is." But like, they have to make it
this
4
is your
paragraphs.
this is your 4 paragraphs to a bullet point thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what this is. So, I thought the article would be slightly more interesting than what it ended up being, but whatever.
Okay, I see, and maybe this is old news, but it's new to me. Mark Waid to write the new history of the DC universe. Um,
Ooh.
and this is launching from DC in 2025. Uh, Barry Allen's journey begins in issue 1. We've got Jerry Ordway and Todd Newick on that one. A lot of new artists, Easter eggs to loyal fans. It is a new series that is going to chronicle the timeline of DC Comics canon as it currently stands. So this kind of sounds like a a more DC's version of what you were just kind of explaining, but there's more like actual comic news in it. In that Mark Waid is kind of saying, okay, where are we in the DC universe today, and what does that look like cleaning up the like history of how we got there? Because all these old comics that exist in I always forget Earth One.
Uh-huh.
DC universe like
Yeah.
don't necessarily tie to the things that are happening right now in the DC universe. This sounds like a comic for like big nerds who are going to geek out on seeing like how things came to be the way they are and what are the nuanced differences between the old vintage comics that don't necessarily I also they stand the test of time as like classics that introduced classic ideas and concepts, but they don't stand up to the the grandeur that these huge pop culture icons like Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Superman have become, right?
Right.
They're also like throwaway and finicky uh, in their delivery. It'll be fun to give some grandeur to the history of like where we found them in the place now. Mentioning a bunch of cover artists that are all people we like: Chris Samney, Dan Mora, Art Germ. There's covers with just like every character on them
Of course. Yeah,
that
yeah.
look really fun. Just like tons and tons of people on them. Um, so yeah, that sounds like a fun one. I love Mark Waid. He was at our con last year, and he was very sweet to us.
Yeah.
So
Crazy. That's another, we talk about this every once in a while too, where it's like sometimes you go to these cons and it's like, oh my God, it's Mark Waid and he's just sitting there twiddling his thumbs. Like
yeah,
nobody's going to talk to him. Everybody's too busy getting 67, baby covers signed by Scotty Young.
right.
And you can just go talk to the guy who wrote JLA Tower of Babel. Like it's nothing.
All right, can I give you another one real quick?
Totally. And then I have a really good one actually.
Okay, I just have more on Todd McFarlane buying Diamond Comic Distributors rumors,
Yes, excellent.
which I we heard that like a month or so ago, right? But we didn't know really how much stock to put into that, and it turns out it's more of a real thing.
Okay.
So, just a quick note to say we're approaching a bidding war for the remains of Diamond, which it may sell for next to nothing. It may have if it has a lot more interested people in it, it might get pricey. Who knows? And then is it successful beyond that? Like we don't know. This could be like somebody spending like millions for MySpace, and then like though there's like nothing to salvage on MySpace, right? Because
Yeah,
people have moved on by the time all the paperwork gets signed. Um, but if there's anybody in comics that could save Diamond, maybe it's a Todd McFarlane type, right? Like a
totally.
huge name, someone just like everyone generally loves,
Mhm.
um, has had a huge impact on independent comics and Image and creating a lot of the early characters there and setting the template for what creator-owned comics like would become, keeping prices fair and low. Um, into 2025, which is like nuts to see how much a Spawn comic costs next to like any other comic book. So he's somebody that you'd be glad to see helming something like that. As for all the problems we have with Diamond, sometimes you hate to see something like that go if it can be saved, but just done a little better.
Yeah, totally. The Todd father seems like a good person to try and shepherd that back to good graces.
Yep.
All right, this one is an actual real good news hit. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Marvel is reviving Marvel Knights.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. And Quesada is doing the art and
Whoa.
Priest is writing.
All right. Hell yeah.
Yeah, totally. So it's a let's see, is this a one shot or a limited? It is a series. No word if it's limited or ongoing, but it's called Marvel Knights: The World to Come. And all right, here's the presser. You ready? The king of
Mhm.
Wakanda is dead, leaving unguarded the world's most advanced technology, most precious metal, and a cryptic vault of dark secrets, while triggering global conflicts among Marvel's heroes, villains, and mutants. With T'Challa gone and the future of the Marvel Universe teetering on a vibranium knife edge, a tribal challenge ensues for the Wakandan throne, and its mysterious victor will emerge as the new leader of Wakanda and usher in the world to come.
Hey,
That sounds
big
pretty dope.
stakes. Yeah, that does sound fun.
And I mean, Quesada doing art, this is crazy. It says it's the first series that he's drawn for anybody since 2007. He's done cover art, like cover work, but this is his
Yeah.
first interior work. So,
Oh, that's rad. I do think there's something to like the Jim Lee hush of it all that
sure.
is maybe making a handful of these other guys like shake the dust off and be like, yeah, why don't I give it a go and make another classic while I still can?
Yeah. Well, we can ask him about that Friday
Heck yeah.
because Quesada's going to be at Planet Comic Con.
Yeah, baby. I need to bring a little like sketchy cover to start seeing if I could get people to do little wee sized remarks. He'd be somebody that'd be awesome to have a little doodle. My Howard the Duck cover is getting that I used to do this on
Yeah,
and have people add a little Howard too. It's getting a little full.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. It looks awesome. I've got a
Um,
couple blank giant sized X-Men's
ooh, yeah.
facsimiles, and I was like, that'll be one that I just like will never run out of. Just have someone draw their favorite X-Men.
Well,
on the
or
cover of
if
that.
if you could really zhuzh it and get
We'll
a
get people to like one by one do the characters from the
yeah, man,
OG cover.
do a jam of the original cover.
Oh,
Yeah,
that'd be sick. I wonder if I could do like a base pencil to like show where everybody goes
yeah,
and then have different creators draw on top of it.
fill it in. Yeah. I pulled out all of my. I told you guys this last year, and I forgot to do it, but I pulled out all my blank magic cards. So I think I'm gonna have
Oh,
folks
yeah.
sketch those this year.
That would be sick.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Um,
Hell
okay.
yeah, brother.
I
That
think
sounds tight.
that's all the exciting news, at least that CBR has. You got anything? Any last minute?
Well, I saw The Question got a dog. Renee Montoya has an alien dog named Crispus in the latest issue of The Question, and I
Oh, they
love
should have
that.
named him Interrobang.
I love another good boy in comics.
Yes.
I'm always here for that. And yeah, that's about it. Kevin Smith's gonna write a Spider-Man and Fantastic Four crossover,
That's cool.
and that'll be fun too. Like seeing Kevin Smith pop back into comics every once in a while. We liked his. I don't know if the Green Arrow was the first comic that he wrote, but it's kind of the one I know him for.
Yeah, that
And
and
it was good.
his Daredevil run.
Yeah, that's right. He did do that Daredevil
Or
run.
his Daredevil arc, I guess.
Yep.
Cool.
But yeah, that's it. I'm gonna call this one for Bleeding Cool. I think Bleeding
Yeah.
Cool had a little bit better news this week.
It certainly sounded like it read a little easier than CBR.
The Marvel Knight stuff was great. That wasn't on Bleeding Cool's homepage, so
Well, there you go.
I'm excited for that. Wakanda-based stuff is fun.
Yeah.
But we've got to deliver on this show's main premise, which is first issue comic books, a fun new place to hop in and get your journey on. And I read 2 such comics this week, an indie and a manie. And we'll start with our indie because it ties into Planet. We've got Dan Panosian, who is, many of you may know as a cover artist who's going to be at Planet, but he's written a handful of comics that we've really liked as well. And he's writing this one that's coming out, or that came out today as we're recording this, Wednesday, March 19th, called The Last Boy, which is a kind of adaptation or sequel to Peter Pan.
I am so hyped for this book.
As you should be. Okay, so this book starts out kind of where you would expect a charming sequel to start. We open right on like Peter Pan being whispered to by Tinkerbell and tells him that Captain Hook is messing with the natives again, and he rushes off to save the day. It's kind of just like, yep, we're picking up with some action doing Peter Pan stuff. Then we hop out of Neverland and we check on what's going on with Wendy. And Wendy's now an adult. She's about to be married. She's taking care of her ailing father and getting bossed around by her mother. And this is kind of like the thing we start to set up at the beginning of the book is like, we're showing you why Neverland was so magical in the first place, right? That it is a place where you can have all this independence as a child and have a lot of fun and imagination and do the things you think are right and have no one tell you no, right? Whereas the real world was this place bound by rules, and there's this lack of excitement there and lack of independence for all these children. That's all well and good, and that would make a fine comic, right?
Sure.
But as you continue through the book, this whole idea gets flipped on its head. And you start to see that perspective really change. That like Peter, as the story goes on, you can tell is like desperate to hang on to his youth and blind to the fact that Neverland has kind of been growing around him while he stayed in the same place. The natives don't need him to take care of them anymore. Captain Hook and his crew are like old men at this point who've more or less gone straight. And Peter's just like harassing them because he can't let go of all the good times he used to have, right?
Yeah.
And Tinkerbell is kind of just like a bored shit stirrer, where she's just like, I want some fun, I want some action. You and me, like I'm a magical fairy who's like locked in place and up to hijinks, and you're this little boy who's like full of rambunctious energy, and like let's go fuck some shit up. Like that's kind of the energy they have. And as it goes through this, you're just like, ugh, what an obnoxious child who doesn't understand um, that the world is changing without him. And meanwhile, you go back and you see Wendy again and start to recontextualize her journey, where she's become independent by going back to the real world, right? She's breaking the kind of norms of 1920s society by not letting the world around her like halt her career. So she's not beholden to like her family or fiance that she's, in society supposed to be taking care of or like doting on. But she's checking those boxes and having it all while also taking care of herself and creating a career for herself. She's writing a book and really going out there and has an editor, staying up late to make sure she does all the stuff she can do. And it's making her a better, more rounded, well-rounded person for it. And I think in the next issue or two, we're probably going to see these two flip back it like into each other's lives,
Yeah.
and really really start to highlight all of these like changes and what was better for them in the long run as people to grow, and what it means to grow and become independent and all this stuff. So a very very layered book that started as something that could have just like easily been, here's more fun and hijinks with Peter Pan, right? And
Yeah.
I loved that it started that way, and then was like slowly over the course of reading it, you were like, oh, here's the real thread here.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of maybe a more real world, like adult version of Hook with Robin
Yeah.
Williams.
Right.
Only like grounded and realistic. Wendy has to go to work, and yeah, I know at the end, Peter realizes that he's like, oh, the we're growing up's not so bad, but
Yep.
kind of almost sounds like Peter in Last Boy might make a heel turn, and
Well, he does kind of read as the bad guy
yeah,
at a couple points in this, where the natives are like, hey, we've got this covered. We know what we're doing. We don't need your or want your intervention. You're stuck in place. And then he's like, yeah, he's like beating up senior citizens on Captain Hook's ship.
don't do
Just
that.
because he can't believe, like, because he's got this one thing to hang on to, and it's that he's everybody's hero. These are the good guys, these are the bad guys.
Yeah,
And the good guys will always love me and support me, and the bad guys will always hate me and lie to me. And the world is more nuanced than what a child story would lead you to believe.
sure,
And, it's another layer to that point of this comic in particular. So
cool.
really good stuff.
I'm jazzed about it.
Yeah.
I
All
hope.
right. And
I hope we get
Oh,
a special variant or artist exclusive at the con is what
at the con.
is what
Yeah,
I'm
that would be
actually hoping
awesome.
for. So
Yeah, I would love to. I don't have I read it. I bought it digitally today. So I'd love to pick up an actual copy and have him sign it if we can. Okay, the other book I read was The Flash, which is written by Jeff Lemire. And I always love picking up these DC comics or these big two comics that are written by Jeff Lemire, because If you're a comic book fan, you know him from things like Sweet Tooth, which are these kind of a lot of the things he writes are in the vein of this that are like heavy, kind of depressing. There's a
Yeah.
lot of like loss and grief, um, and themes of like losing yourself or losing your childhood innocence and kind of like having to overcome depression to see who you are again. And and to have that writer who writes those sort of things very prolifically, like write the Flash, like one of the funnest DC characters,
Yeah.
like is always just like, what is he gonna do with that? Like he wrote a Peacemaker book a few years ago, and that was another one that was just like, gosh, what a random fun DC character and what a random creator to put on it. So exciting to just see where that goes. All of these Absolute books so far have had such fun, incredible art, and that's like definitely still the case here. Like I think I first want to say the motif of these like very rigid, like red rectangles and blocks showing the like motion or the frenetic energy of moving fast or traversing through time, um, is just not a way I've seen the Flash necessarily handled before, and it really works. Um, it all of these Absolute books, I think, have not only done a good job of telling a story, but kind of reinventing some of the, like, visual language of these characters, which has gone a really long way in making them feel fresh and new in a
Mhm.
way that reboots typically don't feel, like, new or different enough to validate their existence, and so far, I'm just so pleased with all the Absolute comics I've read, and for so many reasons, I can be complimentary of them.
You know, I don't wanna derail this conversation because I wanna hear about Absolute Flash, but I was thinking about, Absolute Superman specifically,
Yeah.
and I realized that Absolute Superman is the kind of story I wanted, Superman Red Sun to be.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because I picked up Red Sun and I was like, "Oh yeah, Comrade Superman is going to destroy the United States."
Yep,
And that book, I mean, granted, you know, it's a product of its time, all that kind of stuff.
yep.
DC's not going to let Mark Millar do that, but um, you know, Superman just ends up being Superman, but only he's has a hammer and sickle on his chest instead of an S, right? Like
Yes. Right.
it's pretty much the same character with window dressing, and that's the point of the book is that Superman's always going to Superman,
Yep,
regardless of where he lands. But
yep.
um, these Absolute books are what I wanted out of that kind of material, where
Yeah,
it's a material fundamental change to what the character is, uh, but it's still they still all hit the same way as heroes. Like what makes them
yes.
heroes is still there, but all the superficial more superficial stuff is all changed.
Yeah. A Superman that lives in a morally gray world and creates some morally gray areas for himself or like uh or where like political leanings can affect a god on earth's viewpoint of what's right and wrong
Right.
is an endlessly interesting story, and I think it's been really tough for DC to, and I understandably so, I think, to like let anyone change the nature of this character because people do view Superman as a symbol of something that kind of transcends uh I don't know, the whims of, like, change,
Yeah.
that he's just, like, always moral, always saving lives, like, never taking a side, but at some point that does it's exciting to see Clark Kent wanna take a side.
Yeah. Right.
I
That's
think
exactly right. Yeah.
I think we're at a point now too where we can say, "Hey, here's a parallel universe version in different circumstances that, like, let's see what happens." And as readers and fans, we can let the archetype of Superman exist over here and stay untouched while still have a lot of fun with these side stories. And I think both publishers, both of the big two, are getting better and better about being like, yeah, let's play with the characters more, or like, let's be a little more lenient on some of the universal truths of who Peter Parker is and who Clark Kent is and who Bruce Wayne is.
Totally.
Especially, and I mean, Absolute Batman is the one that's taken it the the farthest, the fastest.
Yeah.
That he's just like cracking skulls left and right.
Yeah. Totally. Well, and
uh,
in that last issue, maybe it was issue 5, whatever,
yep.
when he makes the bat signal out of the pile of money, the bribe money.
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus, that's so cool.
Yep.
uh,
Yeah, a lot of iconic moments already in
yeah,
those comics. Just because you're allowed to put the characters in situations that they've never been allowed to be put in before.
totally.
So, of course, you're gonna have some moments that you're just like, "Wow, how's it been 90 years and I've never seen Batman do this or that the other before,"
Yeah.
which is very striking. Um, okay, so this first issue of The Flash, off the bat, I already said very striking art that I loved.
Yeah.
So it's already got that going forward. If you're an art-driven person, I say pick this up. Um, easy accessibility point. However, I'll say that it starts to like walk into what's going on and doesn't totally give you like, here's the Flash and here he is in his outfit and here's what his superpowers can do. It's not like a straight up origin story. It's like self-contained into a singular issue that is like, here's how we got here with the Flash and now he's the Flash, and then the next issue he'll have an adventure. Like, we're kind of slow rolling, I think, how he came to be the Flash and how he got his powers and how he's dealing with that. Where
Okay.
we kind of meet Absolute Batman is like, he's kind of been on his shit for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
This book is starting with like a teenager who is trying to find their place in the world, and then has like just accidentally stumbled onto getting superpowers, and by the end of it, like, hasn't the extent of those powers haven't been made known to us, and um, obviously there's no concept of like what they're gonna do with those powers. So a lot remains to be seen about this book. But what I can tell you is our star is Wally,
Okay.
and he's an army brat, and he's popping around from base to base with his dad, who's a colonel, and hasn't been able to make friends, which is making him kind of like a moody little goth teen. And then also at the army base is Barry Allen, who is the like lead scientist, and he kind of takes a shine and sees himself in Wally. Um, Takes him under his wing and starts to say like, "Hey, you're a smart kid. Maybe you can start helping out with some of the stuff, and we can give you some direction in life because your dad's maybe not giving you the attention someone your age needs when they've been moved around so much that they can't make friends." So this is also like, again, the really nice nuanced stuff you get with Jeff Lemire is like all like the teenager feelings
Hmm.
stuff that he's like really, really good at. Um, and in doing so, you see all kinds of like fucked up experiments and things that the government has their hands in, that these army scientists are doing all this like stuff. And I think Barry's intentions are good. He's like, obviously we're working for the army. Army's interested in weapons. I see that as like a means to start on a path of bigger, like more altruism. That, yeah, the short term plan here can be weapons, but there's a grander task at hand here once we move beyond the weapons. And Wally comes back to the uh, lab late one night. Barry's running an experiment, and uh, things go wrong. And then at that point, something has happened wherein Barry's world has gone out of sorts, and he's experiencing like flashes of like moving here, moving there. The story is kind of told in like a 1 day ago, 1 year ago, 2 weeks from now, today, kind of format that like lends itself well to the like frenetic art style of like jumping around and being out of time and not understanding um, where you are in time and place that Barry might be experiencing with getting used to his or sorry that Wally might be experiencing in getting used to these powers. So all that to say that I think this is gearing up to be a book for comic book readers.
Mhm.
That I don't know that I would give this one to someone who's completely new, because the format of it is a little hard to wrap your head around because of like that frenetic feeling. And
Sure.
being someone who kind of understands the essence of the Flash, it's easy for me to read that and be like, whoa, what a cool device to get across the vibe of what this character is experiencing. But if you're someone new who's just expecting like, who is this new character and what's his origin story, I think it's a little tough to, one, walk away from the first issue and like still not fully understand what's going on, and then two, yeah, kind of have that atypical um, timeline throughout the comic. So big recommend if you're a fan of Absolute stuff so far, and a Jeff Lemire fan and a Flash fan, like really fun superhero stuff. But
I'm
warning if you're um, just dipping your toe in and trying to find some new accessible things, that this at least might be like, try it after a few issues have come out, because it might be easier to wrap your head around if you have a few things in a row to like get the fuller picture in one sitting,
yeah.
than leaving with some vague unknowns and having to wait a month before a second issue.
Uh it sounds like I'm getting hints of Spider-Man origin and um what's the Hulk's little teenage buddy, Jones, Rick Jones.
Rick, yeah.
Like it sounds like it's kind of a mix between those two
Yeah,
a
that's
little
a
bit, right? Peter
Rick
Parker's
Jones is a great parallel, yeah.
yeah, Peter Parker's a fish out of water. Rick Jones is like, I mean, it's like if Rick Jones turned into the Hulk instead of Bruce Banner, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So cool. I'm absolutely stoked about Absolute Flash. Um, that one and Absolute Martian Manhunter are like the two books I cannot wait to read. So
Yeah, this comic had the absolute Martian Manhunter preview in the back of it,
yes,
and oh my god, I think was his name Javier Rodriguez is
yeah.
doing the art on it. Unreal.
I mean, the
It's
cover
gonna be
alone,
it's gonna be wild.
yeah,
Like, I loved the first few pages of it, and that's probably another one that, like, I'll say Jeff Lemire is somebody who's maybe for a more seasoned reader, and I think this Martian Manhunter comic is also maybe gonna be one that's for a more seasoned reader, but, like, it'll really pay off. We need those. I hate to sound, like, negative when I talk about a comic like that, like, maybe isn't as accessible. It's definitely a positives in as many respects as it is a negative. Like,
yeah,
people who've been reading comics for longer need these more, like, layered, complex pieces to, like, do elevated things with the art form. And then there's an art form all in itself of telling a story that, like, more people can um find themselves in and get into more easily, right? Like,
totally.
they're like two different skill sets that are like just as impressive. So um And we need them both to keep comics alive.
Definitely. Well, not to hasten the end of the episode, but Greg is waiting for us to do a Patreon. So we're going to hop over there. Let's see. This is the main. So we need to tell everybody to join our Patreon.
Yes.
It's a great community. Also found out that this episode is happening live. So we do have a few Patreon members listening to us as we record right now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I accidentally hit the go live button as well as record. So that's a special little treat for everybody. Hopefully we didn't embarrass ourselves too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We never edit anything out anyway. So
join our Patreon. It's a great community. These guys are cool. Listen to us every week. Join our social media, comment at us, fire back episode responses, drink Boulevard Space Camper. What else?
Buy more comics and support artists.
Yeah, sure. Do that too. Why not? All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye. First Issue Club podcast is brought to you by Boulevard Brewing Company, the people responsible for our favorite drinks, the Space Camper Cosmic IPA family of beers. Our show is edited and produced by our hosts Mike DeStacy, Greg Lichtag, and Andy Vargas. You can find us on social media at First Issue Club, and you can join the supporters who keep our humble podcast going on our Patreon at patreon.com/firstissueclub.